So why scan film at home? Well, I thought I was getting the best scans from the lab, but then I noticed something wasn't quite right. After hours of comparing scans from the lab to the Epson flatbed, what I learned changed my film photography forever. If you're looking to improve your film photography, I guarantee you don't want to miss out on this. Let's get to it. Call me crazy, but the other day I opened an email, and there it was, the scans I'd been waiting for. I knew it was going to be the last image on that roll of Kodak T-Max 100. You know the one you had that gut feeling about. But after uploading the scans to Lightroom, I was shocked. My heart sank in disappointment. I missed focus. How did that happen? And then I saw it, and I realized I didn't miss focus. This was something else. But just because we send our film out to the lab doesn't mean that we're going to get perfect images back. And there's more reasons to scan your film at home than you may realize, but none more important than what I'm about to tell you. Scanning film at home can eliminate the kind of shock that I experienced. After finally creating that award-winning image, you get your scans back and, well, it's out of focus. Take a look at this 120 scan from the lab. Notice the sharp focus in the center. But as I move around the image, there's a clear loss of sharpness, especially at the bottom corners. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. But what's happening? It's not the lens, and it's certainly not the camera, but it is the film. Now, it's not the development, it's a scanning issue. Now, this is not a drum scan, but it is a high-quality scanner. In an email from the lab, they stated that they use the latest Noritsu commercial scanners. It's the scanning process at the lab, and, very likely, the problem is in the film carrier. But the bottom line is the film itself is not laying flat in the scanner, and that's the problem. It's not that I missed focus in the field, as I initially thought. It's the scanner that missed the focus during the scan. I get it, your lab delivers extraordinary results, and you've never had this issue before. But do you really scrutinize every image? I don't. But when you're truly happy with an image, one that you put much effort into, we all scrutinize that image. But unless you have a scanner at home, it's too late. Honestly, I've never noticed this issue until now. I could send it back, or I could send it to another lab and have it rescanned, but who wants to wait for that? Plus, I have a scanner at home. The lab tech typically processes numerous rolls and sheets of film and occasionally gets in a hurry. I'm sure even the best do it at times. Honestly, it can happen at home. But having the tools readily available at home, that can help you fix the problem immediately. But there's much more to scanning at home than an occasional but costly focus issue. In fact, there are many reasons to scan film at home. Let's jump into Lightroom. First, this is how I know the lab made a mistake. This is a scan of the same image, only this one was scanned on an Epson V850 using the 120 film holder that came with the scanner. Note the consistent sharpness from corner to corner. The focus issue is clearly gone. It's obvious. The loss of sharpness in the lab scan is clearly a result of either the equipment, maybe the negative was buckling in the film carrier, or human error. Don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled with the lab results I get 99% of the time. In fact, on close inspection, when it comes to overall sharpness, you'll see that my Epson V850, it's not as sharp as the much larger Noritsu scanner, but it's very close, far closer than I thought. Let's zoom in. The amount of detail in the Epson scan is remarkable. It's not what I expected at all. I've always heard how awesome lab scanners were. I thought it would kind of blow away the Epson. In fact, this negative was scanned in the holder. But there's more. Take a look at this wet scan I made with the Epson fluid mount. More on wet scanning in a moment. Notice the detail and increased sharpness compared to the scans in the holder. And there's no need to worry about getting the negative flat, because that's one of the main benefits of a wet scan. Here's the wet scan compared to the lab scan. Indeed, the lab scan is sharper, but it's not much better. The important takeaway is the overall sharpness. In this image, there's no doubt about it. The Epson clearly outperformed the lab scan. Both the Epson holder and fluid mount images have more consistent sharpness throughout the image, corner to corner. In Silverfast, I set the sharpening to auto, and then I add a little bit more in Lightroom. I certainly didn't want to over-sharpen these, and I'm sure the lab uses a preset they use on most or all films. Nevertheless, most people probably add a little sharpening to their lab scans anyway. Look, I'm not trying to sell Epson scanners, but I am merely pointing out that this flatbed scanner, this thing handles sharpness way better than I ever thought it would. When compared to the scans that I get back from the lab, I'm very happy with the sharpness I'm getting from this Epson. The crux is this: scanning at home, it provides more options to get the best possible results. Truly, I know the pixel peepers are probably going to hate me, but pixel peeping pinpoint perfection pales in comparison to more important attributes like composition, contrast, and details. Let's take a close look at the details in these color scans. When I first compared the Epson to the lab scan, I almost fell out of my chair. I didn't have to be a pixel peeper to see the improved detail in the Epson scan. At 200% magnification, the sharpness is as good, if not better, than the lab scan. At 400%, I know it may be difficult to see in this video, but I can't see any grain in the wet scan, but there's certainly grain in the lab scan. Bear in mind, this is Ektar 100, which is a very low grain film. One thing that's not often being mentioned on YouTube: your images, they're being cropped at the lab. I don't know about you, but when I'm framing an image in the field, I want to frame that image with a vision in mind, and I certainly don't want the lab deciding what parts of the image to cut. I want full control. Keep in mind, photography is about attention to detail. Anyway, forget about the cropping. Look at the sky in this image. Not only is the color and detail far better, but it's almost as if the film's dynamic range had been increased. It's truly mind-blowing. Of course, I realize that a wet scan yields the best results. In fact, you can get a drum scan, which is a wet scan. A drum scan is the best of the best, but you'll pay for it. According to his website, you can get it done by Alex Burke Photography out in Colorado. A medium format negative like this one will run you about $40 per scan. Of course, that's not cheap, but what price do you put on your photography? In fact, with an award winner in hand, I wouldn't hesitate. But that's me. On a side note, I do plan to send him one of these images here for a comparison video that I'm going to do later. Consider subscribing, and that way you'll get notifications when that video posts. Anyway, the more important point is this: having a scanner at home opens new possibilities with film, possibilities you don't have with lab scans. Plus, if you're developing your film at home, you have complete control over the entire process from start to finish. Speaking of control, this is probably the most important point of this entire video. I mentioned that scanning at home changed my film photography forever. That's not an exaggeration. It wasn't intended to be clickbait. I meant it. What I learned is that scanning at home puts the creativity of film back in the hands of the photographer, regardless of the software that you use, whether that's Silverfast, Negative Lab Pro, or both in my case. Having these tools at your fingertips, it allows us to transform the negative into that preconceived vision that we had at the scene, instead of allowing a lab tech to basically pick the right color profile and decide on the contrast and tonal ranges and then turn around and bake that into a JPEG or a TIFF. With that negative in hand, you can make these decisions yourself, right from the comfort of your home or office. You decide what the film look should be, not the tech. The moment I realized the power of scanning at home, the control I had over the colors and tonal ranges of the final product, I realized that this was going to change my film photography forever. On that note, whether you shoot digital, film, or both, there's certainly an art to processing images. Film and digital have more in common than most people realize, and knowing the difference, it is important. For another eye-opening experience and to help you unlock your creative prowess, check out my video on 35mm versus digital photography right here. See you on the trail.